Well, so going up to the 500 startups,
Mhm.
so they have their tagline as blowing up startups with design, data, and distribution.
Yeah.
So could you further explain that?
Sure. I think every venture firm sort of has their unique niche, the thing that they're really proud about, or things that they really feel like they deliver the most value in. For us, especially for accelerator companies, we are really bullish on distribution, right? And distribution comes straight in hand with data, and usually it comes straight in hand with design as well. So we have an accelerator program where we run about 4 batches a year, and of the 30 companies that get into every batch, it's about a 2% acceptance rate out of about 1,500 applications or so. So it's extremely competitive, but when they get placed in here, we will match them with one of our distribution hackers in residence. So we hire like marketers, like startup specific and performance marketers on staff who work with our startups one on one to help them refine their marketing strategies, help them figure out their unit economics, help them figure out their acquisition channels. With the idea that by come demo day and for the rest of the time they have this up and to the right graph that looks phenomenal and kind of it really accelerates them. So that's the thing that we sort of look at is we want companies to come in here as businesses and we will spend the 14 weeks with you to turn it into a company. So that's where sort of the tagline transpires from.
So why is it 500 startups? Like the number 500?
Yeah, so there's a interesting urban myth about that. One is that like Dave had this crazy theory of like wanting to fund 500 different companies, and at the time, we're at 800 companies now, but like at the time, and back in 2009, early 2010, no investor ever thought about investing as many as those companies. Like that's 500 companies, so that was just like so that's myth number one, or that's urban myth, potentially true. The other aspect is Dave. Before 500 Startups, Dave's sort of brand was Dr. Seuss's 500 hats, where it sort of comes from like as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you're wearing all these different hats at once. So I think whatever the answer is, Dave, even if you ask him today, he won't give you a straight answer. So I think it's a mix of those two things.
Wow. So as regards to the distribution, you had this amazing event last week. The weapons of weapons of mass distribution.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
could you tell me about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just staying true to our sort of belief around the importance of distribution for startups, right? It's no longer about can you build a product. It's no longer can you figure out the technology behind it, at least for most consumer and B2Bs or enterprise startups now. Technology has gotten significantly easier, but what has gotten significantly harder is getting those products out into the hands of actual customers. You can have the prettiest product in the world. If you can't get into the hands of customers, you can't sell it, then you don't have a business and you don't have a company. So staying true to that sort of narrative, we held our first conference centered around distribution and only distribution. So we had tons of amazing speakers from the top Silicon Valley heads. We had Sean Ellis, who's like the original growth hacker. He coined the term growth hacker. We had Heaton Shaw, who was speaking. We had Neil Patel, who was speaking. You know, growth hackers from Lyft, Airbnb, all these big organizations that succeeded were all there giving a presentation on case studies to tactical sort of planning to just sort of, just coaching as well. So it was a great event, great turnout. I think we sold out, and we'll be having it once a year from now on. So another thing that we do here at 500 is we hold about 6 conferences a year. That's beyond the demo days that we hold for the batches, obviously. So, the one before this was Pre-Money. Pre-Money is a conference that's catered specifically towards investors and LPs. So LPs are investors in investors. And then one before that, we had Commerceism, which was a conference, centered around e-commerce, for example. And the tagline on Commerceism was like "Sell out, comrades," right? So we hold, various events that's catered towards, what a startup or a vertical or a need in a startup is. And distribution is one of those things.
Uh-huh. So do you have any plans for Korean market as well?
Yeah, we do. So we will be 500 startups will be very active in Korea starting now. In fact, in this batch that's active here today in this office, we have our first two Korean accelerator companies that are part of the program now. So Shaker and Cream, obviously, they're both out of Fashion Tech Accelerator. So great companies, great founders. And I'll actually be going back there this week for a few weeks, and I'll be spending now half time there at Seoul and here in San Francisco, probably investing anywhere from 15 to 20 companies a year for 500 startups there.
Mm-hmm. So what's the future direction of 500 startups?
Future direction of 500 startups? I think we're still figuring that out.
Uh-huh.
I think, the interesting thing with 500 startups is we are a VC firm, but we're a startup as well. We're only 4 years old. We're sometimes younger than some of the companies that we invest in. So we're trying to figure things out, and we're adding new people. People are leaving, so like all these things are getting reshaped as a strategy sort of takes on its own, substantial meaning behind it. I think we're sort of starting to get a good gist of what our strategy sort of looks like, which is the strategy that's stayed true since day one and will always stay true is we will invest in a lot of startups, foster the bottom line, sort of like the economics of the startups, and invest and follow on and get greedy on the ones that are doing well. So from a VC level, it's a diversified risk of return, and it's great. We're doing very well so far. Obviously, I think our general counsel will kill me if I release the numbers. I think that's illegal. But yeah, we're doing well, and we'll see. I think in the next 2 to 3 years for 500 startups is going to be very catalytic, kind of crucial years for us, and I'm excited to see how it shapes up.
Oh, great. So, lastly, what would you like to give advice to aspiring young entrepreneurs?
Young entrepreneurs everywhere.
Maybe specifically Koreans.
Okay. I think if you're anywhere in emerging sort of startup ecosystem, besides just beyond Korea, you want to. There's the beautiful thing about online stuff today is you can follow the best minds in the game, no matter where you are in the world. So one of the things that I did, and kids in Korea and students in Korea can do this too, is when I was going to college in Boston, I followed the top minds in the Valley like Chris Dixon, Andreessen, Horowitz, Dave McClure, Paul Graham, all these different guys and their blog posts, and Mark Suster is a great great blogger as well. So I used to read their blog posts every single day, every morning, every night, and that was my exposure into the Valley because I wasn't in the Valley at the time, and it allowed me to learn quite a bit about how Silicon Valley thought, and that sort of echo chamber of wisdom being shared around. Because if you look at it, Silicon Valley, it's about a 50-plus year cycle of wisdom that's been spread around from the Fairchild semiconductor that was started in, I think, 1957. So when that sort of boom started is where the wisdom started to sort of cycle down, and investors invest and startups exit, and then founders end up investing in other founders. And now we're at this crazy sort of cycle where we have a lot of great wisdom of founders who's actually been operational in startups. And it's not just MBAs or consultants that are telling startups what to do. It's actual founders themselves that are coaching each other. You don't have that anywhere else in the world. I think in Tel Aviv you're starting to see that a little bit more, but other parts of the world you certainly don't have that. So, but the cool thing is you have in the world of Twitter and Facebook, you can read those anytime you want. So I think that's the most important thing. And another thing sort of on top of that too is I think as college students and just generally young professionals really, you should always choose the path that's optimized for learning and the rate of learning and the speed of learning, because I think learning is an exponential thing. It's a compound interest sort of thing. So I've had these conversations with young founders and students recently where they're considering taking a good job at Google that pays them, six-figure job right at the get-go, or join an early stage startup taking maybe 75 cents on the dollar with decent equity upside, and they could be employee number 20, employee number 50. I think you'd be foolish to think that the stuff that you'd be learning as an employee number 20 at a really fast-growing startup is going to be anything like that you spend the next 5 years at Google is going to be anything compared to the rate of learning that you'll have at an early stage startup. So it's not to say that you have to join a startup. I think it's just whatever path you end up taking, just make sure that it's something that you're optimizing for learning. That's what I'm doing, and that's what I've done, and hopefully that's what I'll continue to do. So,
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for the interview.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.